Okay, so thank you again for joining, and I'm going to first share the this sort of FAQ document, which was something I sort of edited based on something that Rabbi Tretchiner from Toronto prepared in 2021. Then he based it on Rav Rimon, whose book I have as well. So it's all we're all sort of working with some of the same material. No secrets here, but I like the way he put it together, and so we're going to use that. Okay, so I guess I'm going to just say another um, sort of orienting like meta statement, and that is the reason why this class, okay, this is intentionally scheduled, like a week before Pesach, so that if you should ask questions, and if I don't know the answer, I have time to research. Okay, that's the goal. The expectation is not that necessarily can answer all your questions, but if that there's enough time for me to find the answer. If I can't. So feel free over the course of the evening as I'm speaking to send me an email with some questions or even put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the questions, and we'll try to have time for all your questions relating to Pesach and any that aren't answered. Please like send them to me, and the sooner you send them, the sooner I can answer them. Or, as is very likely, research the answer if I don't know it offhand. Okay, so that's also why we're gathering this. So let's just go through. I want to start by going through on the source sheet. This document, the FAQ document, all the issues that pertain to first and foremost to this question of Erev Pesach that occurs on Shabbat and how that works. So one question is actually question one. When is chametz sold? So ordinarily we sell chametz with a sale that takes place the morning before Pesach. We can't do it this year because we can't have sales that take place on Shabbat. If we sell our chametz on Friday, however, then how are we going to eat food on Shabbat? So what do we do? So the answer is what we're going to do is there are several different solutions. The one that we are going to do at Ohev is the sale is going to I'm going to meet with our neighbor, with Michelle Martin from across the alley. She's going to purchase our chametz. We're going to meet on Thursday afternoon. Anyone who's around at 3 p.m. on Thursday is welcome to come and watch. If you've never done it, I always find it very moving and special if you're able to be there. The sale will not take effect until uh, Friday, and the chametz that you use on Shabbat will not be included in the sale, which means you'll have to decide in advance which chametz you want to use for your Shabbat meals, and whatever doesn't get eaten, you can't just like stick it in your closet with the chametz you're selling. What doesn't get eaten should be discarded, which is good anyway because discarding chametz is also like a mitzvah as well. So we'll leave a limited amount of chametz unsold and for use on Shabbat, and whatever chametz is not used on Shabbat, we discard. Two, when do we search for chametz? Normally, we search for chametz. The Gemara says orla ba'arsar on the evening before Pesach starts. We can't search the evening before Pesach starts because it's Friday night, and the search for chametz is done traditionally with a candle, maybe more modern update with a flashlight. The Gemara compares, the Midrash compares a God, searching with a candle, and so we imitate that by searching with a candle. Also, maybe there's a particular kind of precision that searching by candlelight or flashlight enables because you have to hold the light very carefully in all the corners of your home as you go through. And so the custom is to search by candlelight. We can't do that on Friday night, so we get pushed up to Thursday night. Okay, that's relatively easy. And we say the bracha when we search on Thursday night, and we make the declaration on Thursday night after we do the searches. There are two declarations of bittul chametz, a nullifying chametz that we make. Normally, we make one at night in which we say, I'm nullifying all the chametz that I don't know about, which excludes the chametz that you do know about, because that chametz you do know about, you want to save for your breakfast on Erev Pesach. And then on Erev Pesach itself, the morning before Pesach starts, we make a second declaration in which we nullify all the chametz, whether we know about it or don't know about it. We're done and done, okay? So we do those same two declarations, but we're going to do one declaration on Thursday night after we do the search, in which case that will then nullify any chametz we may not know about and we have not removed because we don't know about it. And then on Shabbat, after we've had our breakfast on Shabbat and eaten our last chametz, we'll make the next nullification on any remaining chametz. Whether we know about or not know about, we'll do a second nullification. So one on Thursday night and one on Shabbat morning. Okay, that's how that's going to work out this year. Next, when do we burn chametz? So normally we burn chametz the morning before Pesach. We can't do that on Shabbat, and so we're going to burn chametz on Friday morning. Uh, the halacha is you can destroy chametz in any method, and actually, in the days leading up to Pesach, the most fun way to destroy chametz is to eat it. Okay, that's one way as well. But we do have a practice, a strong custom of burning chametz. There's one opinion that chametz does have to be burned, and maybe for the experience of destroying through burning is particularly powerful, and so we do always gather to burn some chametz, or as if we can, and so instead of doing that on erev Pesach, we'll just do it one day earlier, and that will be on Friday morning. Okay, so the burning will take place at shul between 8 and 9 a.m. You can come to the shul and burn. You could also burn any other location in a safe manner. Any other chametz that you wish to destroy, let's say leftovers from Shabbat morning breakfast, so you can flush it down the toilet if it's small quantities. You can make it inedible by pouring some soap on it. Okay. If you stick it in the garbage and put it in the dumpster, that also is a way to get rid of it, and that works as well. I saw dumpsters. It's not on the sheet here. Dumpsters are an interesting. I think it's an interesting legal question. Like if something's in your dumpster, does like we have in our neighborhood the garbage is collected on Monday morning. So if I take if I take a box of Cheerios and I stick it in my dumpster, it's going to be on my property in the dumpster until from Friday, whatever, Friday, Saturday, until Monday morning. The understanding is that it's not being in like people don't like it. It's no longer belongs to me. I've nullified it and it's no longer my property since even though the dumpster is on my street, it's not on the curb. Um, I don't retain property rights in the, I don't know if maybe the lawyers want to push back. I think I don't think if somebody goes into my dumpster and takes out things there, are they stealing from me? I don't think they are. I don't think I have a property right. So anyway, I know in I know I saw at Kent Mill there they have like the shul is has central dumpsters where and they're going to have it taken away before Pesach starts, so you can bring your chametz there. I don't think that's necessary. I think things that are in your dumpster are like out of your house in your dumpster. You've nullified it, doesn't belong to you anymore. Even if it's technically edible, I don't think you have to worry about it. And thank God we're not in a situation where um, I think none of us in the regular course of our lives would ever take food out of a dumpster and eat it, right? Even if it's like technically still minimally edible at that point. Okay, we're going along. I'm gonna just pause. Any questions, comments, and anything I've said so far as we're working our way through? Am I going too fast? Anything I'm skipping? Um, all right. I'm going to continue then. All right, let's go. Okay, as people join, I'm resharing the sheet in the chat just so you can follow along. We are now up to so question three we did already. Question four we talked about already. Okay, so the two chol chamira, all of the nullification of chametz, we do one Thursday night when we search. We do one Shabbos morning, and we burn on Friday morning. Okay. Question five: when do the firstborn fast? There's a custom to have a tanit b'charot, the firstborn fast on erev Pesach, to commemorate the way that our firstborn were spared, the last of the 10 plagues. Um, since we can't fast on Shabbat, we don't fast on Shabbat. We also don't fast on Friday because we don't want to go into Shabbat in a feeling of like weakness and hunger and suffering from fasting. And so when there's a fast day on Friday, it generally gets pushed back until Thursday. An would be Ta'anit Bechorot. Sorry, that's what I'm talking about. Tanya Esther. Tanya Esther, right? If Tanya Esther is never observed on Friday, it's sometimes observed on Thursday. If Tisha B'Av is on Shabbat, it gets pushed to Sunday, but we can't push Tanya B'Chorot to Sunday because Sunday is Yantif. So that wouldn't work. And so Tanya B'Chorot gets pushed back to Thursday. Um, Probably it's always a very lenient fast. My strong recommendation is you should never fast on Erev Pesach. It's a really a terrible way to go into the Seder having fasted. And so we are going to gather at Shul for a Siyum, a celebration commemorating the completion of a Torah learning project. Fortunately, Daf Yomi, finishes Masechet Sanhedrin right before Pesach, and so there'll be a Siyum in Shul on Thursday morning, and you can avoid fasting by being there for the Siyum, or if that's impossible, you can even call in and listen to it. I think that's sufficient because this is really a very This is not a fast in the Talmud. It's a custom that developed much later. We tend to be really lenient about this fast. Again, because it's so unpleasant to go into Pesach having fasted. So that'll be on Thursday this year. Okay. More complicated question is how do we serve chametz foods on this year on Shabbat? And maybe here I'll switch to well, yeah. So let's talk about Shabbat meals because you have to have three, and I guess I'll share the next source sheet. I have a little, I have a few other, I added a few other sources, which are now also in the chat, the Safari sheet. Okay, you should be able to see that too. So on Shabbat, we need to have Shabbat meals. Okay, Shabbat meals feature lechem mishnah. We have two challah rolls on Shabbat, for our meals on Shabbat. So how do we do that a year like this one? So you might think, well, let me just use matzah instead of challah, and I'll just start my Pesach early, and we'll use matzah for my Shabbos meals, and that's how I'll do it. Not unlike sometimes. Like in Israel, if the eighth day of Pesach is on Shabbat, so in those situations, even Jews in Israel have an extra day of Pesach, right, as it were, because they can't, there's no time to bake fresh challah once Pesach ends, and so they also have to use matzah for their Shabbos meals. So you can't use matzah for your lechem mishnah, for your two loaves that you have for your Shabbos meals. So when Pesach ends on Shabbat, Israeli Jews will you do that for this non-eighth day of Pesach, right? It'll be, for them it's like the first Shabbat after Pesach, but they use matzah then. We can't, however, use matzah for our Shabbos meals before Pesach because the Talmud records, and that's your sheet on this. I have that here on the Safari sheet I shared. Rabbi Levi says, "Ochel matzah erev Pesach va al arusato bebeit chamiv." Okay, it's like it's like an engaged couple have sex before their wedding. Okay, like they're already, it's like I think they're saying, you know, we'll just wait, wait a little bit longer and do it the right way. Don't jump the gun. Okay, and that's the line in the Gemara. And so we don't have matzah on Erev Pesach. It should be a special occasion to have matzah for the first time at the Seder. So there are different halachic opinions and different customs that have developed about how far in advance of Pesach we stop eating matzah. Certainly, some actually would only the morning of Erev Pesach. Some it's the full day of Erev Pesach. Some it's a week or two. Some like all of Chodesh Nisan. I always was familiar with the practice of stopping to eat matzah a full 30 days before Pesach. I'm not sure what people have done, but in any event, it's not going to be a solution for our Shabbos meals. So that's not going to work. The poet Bialik apparently in reference to this Gemara said. Um, Ta'amti et shnehem ve'eno dameh. I tried both, and it's actually not at all similar. But be that as it may, we don't have matzah on Erev Pesach. So what we can do and we should do is eat challah on Erev Pesach. But there are two challenges with eating challah for lechem mishnah. One challenge is just like a practical challenge of um, our houses have been cleaned. Our Pesach dishes and pots and pans are out. Our non-Pesach pots and pans and dishes have already been put away. So how do we have this meal with challah? And the second source in the Sfar Shoshi, the Mishnah Berurah, is just um, you can't wash your chametz if you were to use if you have chametz dishes, you can't wash them on Shabbat because there's no Shabbos use for those dishes, right? Because when Shabbos is right, it's we can't do activities on Shabbat that are preparing for after Shabbat, and once we've finished our meal, we have no longer any use for our chametz dishes, and so you can't even wash your chametz dishes after on Shabbat of Erev Pesach. So what is and the other concern, of course, also just to remember is that the prohibition against eating chametz starts on the morning of Erev Pesach as well. So just to we have like a pragmatic question with Friday night and we have a pragmatic question with Shabbat morning. When it comes to Friday night, um, what is one way to do things is to have serve your food on disposable plates, um, and have the challah at the beginning of the meal and then not for the rest of the meal. Okay, so that you wash, say a motzi, you eat your challah, and then either entirely change the tablecloth and then have the rest of your meal as though it were entirely with Pesach food, or just be very careful that the Pesach food that is brought to the table isn't, contaminated by the right. Like just keep everything separate and distinct. Maybe you want to have the challah in a separate room. You could do that as well. I have that source here on the Mishnah. You're allowed to. Um, just in terms of like you don't have to necessarily if you eat um, if you wash and have a motzi in one location and then you go to a second location and have most of your meal, if you have just a little bit of bread in that second location, you can stay there to bench. If not, go back to the first location and bench there. So you could maybe wash on your porch and have some challah, and then you go, your intention is I'm going to eat the rest of my meal inside at the dining room table, then you go back to the porch to bench. That works. Um, we are going to have a meal at the shul Friday night. Everyone is welcome to register, encouraged to register. So we are going to serve that meal from our non-Pesach kitchen on disposable plates, and at the end of the meal, we're just going to lock up the kitchen, and that'll be it. Okay, so that's easy. If you're at home, right, let's say your meat, your chicken is going to be kosher for Pesach, so you could like take the meat, you serve it onto disposable plates in the kitchen, bring those disposable plates to the table and eat it there with a challah, and then everything goes into the garbage, with all leftovers then put in the garbage, right? Like just to keep nothing that is in proximity and contaminated by possibly contaminated with your chametz at the table goes back in to the Pesach dishes, goes back into your refrigerator afterwards. Just bring things to the table in small quantities and as you consume them, and then discard afterwards, and obviously make sure there are no crumbs and it all gets cleaned up afterwards. Shabbos morning, it's a little more complicated because the prohibition against eating chametz kicks in the morning. I think it's around 10:30, 10:45 here in DC. Um, and so you have to finish your bread by relatively early in the morning. What we are going to do at Ohev is we are going to pause before Torah reading after Shachrit. So we'll start Shachrit at 9:15 as usual. At around 9:45, 10 o'clock after Shachrit, we'll pause. We'll have Kiddush, Hamotzi, maybe, I don't know, some snacks, some treats, and then we'll bench and we'll go back to shul and finish davening. Um, I think other communities are just having like everyone's davening early. They'll start davening at 7:30 and they'll just finish in time. Everyone goes home and has their lunch. And that's another way to make this work. Okay. The point is you need to have your second Shabbat meal. That second Shabbat meal has to be before the final time to eat chametz. And so that's how we're going to do it at Ohev here. Questions or reactions on anything I said so far? You can type them out in the chat or you can unmute yourself and just sort of share. Okay. Okay, I can't be okay. If you think of questions later, please send it. I'm sure I'm not being quite as clear as all that. Um, the next issue with meals is shal the third meal. Okay, because the third meal, there's no way to reconcile. We have two competing values or understandings of the third meal. One understanding of third meal has to be in the afternoon after mincha time. Uh, the other is that third meal ideally should be eaten with bread, uh, just like just like the other meals. Um, so the Theo, thank you for asking what will egg matzah next. Okay, I would say if you are always very careful to wash and have a motzi, maybe with lechem mishnah also for shal shudas, then it's probably good to do so as well for this meal and just have shal shudas early also if you can do that, right? Just have two meals in the morning, like extra early. That's gonna be a little bit harder. Um, so that is that's another possibility. Um, that's another possibility. I think many of us are not quite, I mean, just looking around, what I see people doing here at Ohev at Shalshidis is that people are not necessarily eating um, um, their shalshidus, not necessarily eating bread with shalshidus, in which case you should just have shalshidus in the afternoon and have shalshidus in the afternoon and not have matzah or bread at that. That's what the Rama says. That's also the third source on the Sapphire sheet is that there that if you can't eat bread, like just have shalshudis without bread. Okay, for example, and he gives the example of erev Pesach and Shabbat. So that's the third source, fourth source, the final source on the source sheet here. Okay, so that's certainly. That seems reasonable to me. I think that's what I'm going to do. And so once that'll be just like a meal that we're any meal after davening's over, any time in the afternoon, like that meal will be your shal shidduch because we'll have your second meal with lechem mishnah with with challah is in the morning early, and then whenever you eat in the afternoon, that's your shal shidduch. Okay, whatever it might be, not too much in the afternoon because you don't want to go you want to go into Pesach still with a good appetite to eat all your Pesach food. Okay, uh, now finally some questions in the chat. Okay, so Carly's question, can you have one chal use a piece of matzah for lechem mishnah and not eat the matzah? Yes, that totally is fine for Friday night and Shabbos morning. Just the thing to be careful of, Carly, is not to like if you don't hold the matzah and the challah together and then put the matzah back with the other matzah, okay? Um, so yeah, but that's fine. You can just that totally works. We actually use matzah a lot during the year for lechem mishnah, but for the rest of the year we do put them together. We put the matzah next to a loaf of challah on our challah board, and then it goes back into an open box of matzah, and we eat it during the year. But on Pesach, obviously, Pesach this doesn't work. Going backwards, Nathan, Kol Chamir. So we say it Thursday night and Shabbos morning. So Thursday night when we do the B'dika, and Shabbos morning, right before the end of the time for owning chametz. If you're traveling, then I don't know if you're traveling Thursday night. It's a little more complicated, but well, you could say it anyway, actually, even if you're traveling, wherever you are Thursday night, you could say it. And even if you're not at home and you can't search. I don't know. If you're traveling, let me know. We'll figure something out. And there's the egg matzah. Egg matzah can work for motzei on this Shabbat. That's one solution. The challenge, it's fine. I think the question with egg matzah is it's not obvious that egg matzah, so you can't eat egg matzah when you like once the prohibition of eating chametz kicks in, you can no longer Ashkenazi position is no longer to eat egg matzah. So it doesn't solve the shal shudus problem. It does enable you to have lechem mishnah at your Friday night and Shabbos morning meals without worrying about contaminating your chametz dishes. So that's good. But there's some questions about like what is the real bracha for egg matzah. So I would say I don't know if that seems like it work for you, definitely you can rely on it. But I am more inclined to see if you can make it work with real challah because they're just questions of what the appropriate bracha is for egg matzah, depending on how it's eaten, and so I don't know. It's a good solution. I know the Rav Rimon, who really taught me most of about this topic, he's less excited by it. I share something that he created. I'm going to just find it right now. It's on the shul website, but I'll share it with you all as well. Um, he made like a very nice overview as well. Let me just I'll share it. Um, Here it is. Here. This is that's a chart that Rav Rimon made again in 2021. He's so good at like, kind of sort of sharing, like graphics and saying things, in a clear way. So I think this is very helpful. Does he talk about egg matzah here? He does not. He doesn't think he doesn't. He's not so into that topic. That's into that solution. It's not his favorite solution. But yeah, some people definitely endorse it and encourage it, and it has its benefits. Other questions of what we've seen so far? Let's go back to the Q&A, the FAQ. What do we do with chametz that remains after the Shabbat meal? So the chametz that remains may be disposed of one of three ways before the sixth day of that hour. One, allow someone who's not Jewish to remove it for himself or herself. That's fine, right? If you have a friend or neighbor, or custodian, you come by, okay? Flush very small quantities down the toilet. Some avoid this because it's degrading to food and inappropriate to treat food that way. Three, dispose of chametz in a trash can or bag, declaring the bag to be ownerless and leaving it outside one's private property, for example, in a dumpster, and avoiding during Pesach. Fine. So that also we would do that for our your disposable plates and things like that. Chametz becomes muktzah on Shabbat afternoon. That's always, I mean, chametz is always muktzah on Yantif, so you can't move it if you find it. So you have to like cover it until you're able to dispose of it after Yantif ends. Shal Shudus, we mentioned already. Um, Either two meals in the morning or a meal in the afternoon without bread, which I think is what I think for most of us, I think is going to be the better solution. Um, can you make preparations on Shabbat for the Seder? So normally, right, Erev Pesach is filled with cooking and cleaning and table setting and roasting your shank bone and your egg and all and making salt water, all of those things. We generally can't do any of that stuff on Shabbat. So all of that has to be done um, a day a day earlier, which is challenging because it means you have one less day to prepare. By the 13th of Nisan, you have to have all of your Seder preparations completed. The advantage is that all of your Seder preparations are completed a full day before Pesach starts, and Shabbat can be a chance to breathe a little bit and to relax and to maybe take a nap so that we go into Pesach a little bit better rested and not so exhausted. And hopefully we can sit at the Seder and be more engaged and sing and talk and just not feel they're not like falling asleep into our soup like some years because we've had a chance to rest and sleep over Shabbat. So that's a real bracha for a year like this. Um, I do think, and this is that you can do minor preparations that don't entail malacha between sunset and nightfall as we're waiting for the Seder to begin. And that would be things like, not cooking or roasting anything or heating it, or heating anything even, but like setting the table. So if you say, setting the table, you could do, I think, between sunset and nightfall. And then once nightfall comes, once it's dark, then the Seder can begin. How do we light candles for Pesach night? This is the same as, and question 11 and 12, this is the same as any time Yom starts on Saturday night. It's not really any different because it's Pesach as opposed to Shavuot or Rosh Hashanah or whatever it may be. And that is we use a pre-existing flame to light our Yom Tov candles. So what's very common is to have like a 24-hour yahrzeit candle or a 48-hour yahrzeit candle, and we use that candle to light our Yom Tov candles. And then if you have a 24-hour candle, you want to light a second 24-hour candle so that you can use that to light your candles on second day of Yom Tov. If you have a 48-hour candle, then you don't have to worry about that. And Havdalah is recited during Kiddush. So as the first step of the Seder, we sit at the table and we make Kiddush as, in our first cup of wine at the Seder. So that Kiddush includes Havdalah. It should be spelled out in your Haggadot. When it gets to the bracha Berei Mor Ha'esh, we look at our Yontif candles burning. Many have the custom of putting two candles together so they make a larger flame, like a Havdalah candle. If that's possible, that's what I try to do. Um, the, um, and that's how we do that. Um, other questions? Next round of questions, and I have more things I can say, but whether I can go, I can give you my, I don't know, my Seder advice 101. Any other questions about anything we've covered, anything we have not covered? The only bad question is the one you're too scared to ask. Okay, so I'll share a few other sort of things sort of useful tips, okay, or things to know about, keep in mind about the Seder. One is, I guess, Halakhic, and the other is sort of pragmatic. The Halakhic piece to remember for the Seder is that the 4 cups of wine, similar in some ways to like Kiddush the rest of the year. In some ways, there are a couple of ways in which the 4 cups of wine are distinct and different from um, like the other. Kiddush the rest of the year. Let's think of the ways. Kiddush the rest of the year, one person makes Kiddush, everyone else listens, says Amen. They don't have to drink. And in fact, the one making Kiddush doesn't have to drink. So uh, I could make Kiddush and pour my wine into other people's glasses and they could drink and that's fine. Or I could drink and no one else drinks and that's also fine, right? Somebody has to make Kiddush. The wine has to be drunk, but no one has to do both. Whereas Kiddush at the Seder is the first of the I apologize for the beeping. I have a lot of people trying to. Okay. Is the first of the four cups of wine that every participant at the Seder has to consume. And so at the Seder, everyone should, when one person makes Kiddush, everyone should drink, their first cup of wine. Another difference is Kiddush the rest of the year, the quantity of that you have to consume is just a cheekful. So you just take a sip or, of wine or grape juice, whatever, and that's fine for Kiddush. Whoever does, whether it's the person making Kiddush or someone else at the table, that's the amount that has to be consumed. Whereas each of the four cups of wine has to be mostly consumed. So you should use a small cup of wine so that you can drink four of them, okay, without passing out or being sick from too much grape juice, okay? So that's different from Kiddush the rest of the year. There's a separate mitzvah to drink four cups, and so which we understand to be most of the majority of each of those four cups. And so that's also different from the rest of the year. Another difference is for the four cups we recline, which is not a rule for the rest of the year. And I'm sure there's another one too. That's what I can think of right now. Okay, so that's really just think of mind, just to keep in mind, like as you go into the Seder, like because we're used to Kiddush the rest of the year, but at the Seder it really is different. It can be grape juice, doesn't have to be wine. It can be sweeter wine with less alcohol. Like don't make yourself sick. The cup doesn't have to be very big, right? If it's 4 or 5 ounces, that's plenty large, and then you um, right, and then you can have 4 cups of that, four of them without getting too sick. Another piece of Seder advice. This is the one that like really changed my life, maybe 15 years ago or so, and that is we serve and eat a large quantity of karpas, and we make it into a karpas course. Uh, in I don't know, like in my family of origin, karpas was like a piece of boiled potato, and I then subsequently spent many years at wonderful, wonderful sedarim where people are very careful to eat less than an olive volume of karpas, and that is to avoid questions about when do you say an after bracha when you finish the karpas because we're doing it for magid and when will we do that, and so we just have less than an olive volume, you don't have to worry about it, but that is it's a real concern, but there are more important concerns, and we serve large quantities and diverse amounts of karpas. Karpas can be anything, any food for which the bracha is borei pri adama. So we serve roast potatoes, and we serve parsley, and we serve bananas and strawberries and taro chips. And cucumbers and pepper, anything that the bracha is borei pri adama, we keep the karpas on the table all through Magid, and so people are munching and snacking during Magid, and this has really been a game changer because another you know, unpleasant Seder memory of my youth is being so hungry during Magid. You're sitting there just really, really hungry, and then by the time you're able to eat, you're just like, too hungry, and you feel kind of sick, and so just the Karpaz course, I strongly recommend it. It, um, experientially it's changed, and halakhically also, like the Rambam says, you have to have at least a kazayit, right? So, you don't. It's not only a game, but it's a mitzvah to eat something. Generally, you would eat at least a kazayit of it, and so the it's also an advantage of having a large karpas. So if you haven't heard this yet from me, this is my I don't know, the best piece of advice I have to share, I think, about Pesach. Another sort of shared, like I think I could have another pragmatic, experiential, like Seder thing I'll share, and then I'll one more halachi piece, and then if no one has other questions, maybe we'll pause. We'll sort of end for the night. And that oh wait, prep for Seder question. Can one cut celery and prep karoset as a snack on Shabbos? Happens to save the leftovers for the Seder. That's I want to have salad on Shabbat, so I'm going to cut my celery on Shabbat, and I'll munch on some. I don't know. We do say that. Um, I'm gonna get back to you about that. We generally that is the rule. We do allow that on Yom Tov. We say like what if guests you're allowed to do sort of like cooking on Yom Tov, even if we're not gonna in case guests come and then leftovers available the next day. I'm not sure if that works for like chopping things. And I think the answer is if it's really if it's really um, if it's the type of thing you would really do on Shabbat for Shabbat. then you can do it on this Shabbat as well. And if it happens, but at the point at which the quantity of celery you're cutting is vastly more than what you would possibly want for yourself, then I think that's a little bit. Then I think it's probably not as appropriate. Um, because it's different from like on Yom Tov putting something on the fire. Like it's each act of chopping is a distinct act, and the point at which you've chopped pounds of celery far more than you want. I think it's so. Do it on Friday, okay? Someone asked offline so that I can clarify the chametz that's not covered by the sale. So the answer is the chametz that you're using on Shabbat is not covered in the sale. You're not because you're going to eat it, right? You're selling the chametz that you're not going to use, and the chametz you're going to use you're not including in the sale, which means that any leftovers you have to discard, right? So the sale by the time you sit down on Friday night, the sale will already have happened, and the chametz that you've sold isn't yours anymore. And so the chametz, like the two little rolls or the pita bread or whatever that you have in a plastic bag that you can eat with your Shabbos meals, that belongs to you because you haven't sold it. But if you eat one of them and you don't eat the other one, you can't put it in your closet with your other chametz that you're selling because that sale already took effect. So eat what you're going to eat, and the rest should be discarded. Shabbos morning before the whatever 10:30, 10:45, whatever time it is, should be discarded. In the dumpster outside your house by then. Um, the other piece of keep sending questions, and I'll keep. We'll wrap up by 9, okay? No matter, okay. But then you can also write to me or call me in the coming days. Um, our practice in our home is we have many, many different Haggadot, different versions, different translations, different illustrations, and I set them all out as guests come, they get to take a Haggadah that they want, and they use it for the Seder. They can switch in the middle if they want, and it's a little bit more. There is like a barrier, it doesn't create some. There's a challenge of following along because you can't just say, and now everyone turn to page 7, look at the bottom of the page, we'll all sing V'hisha Amda together because everyone has a different Haggadah. But so you have to you have the person sitting next to you help you, or you help the person sitting next to you. Here's where we are. I've just found the creativity of of diversity of translations and commentaries and illustrations. Just exciting, and it sparks conversation, encourage people to think and ask questions. You had the Russia you call the wicked son. My Haggadah calls him the willful son. What's the difference between being wicked and being willful? Which one is more accurate? I don't know. Whatever. Every translation is itself a commentary, and so having different editions, I think, can be just like more like grist for the mill and can foster questions and conversations. So that I like to do it that way. I understand there are disadvantages, but I've always loved to have like lots of different Haggadot. And for many years, we tried to buy a new one every year, and that was also kind of fun to add it to the mix. So there's so many amazing Haggadot. Um, and finally, there's another like halachic piece. Um, there, um, the quantities of food that we eat at the Seder, the matzah, the maror, the korech, we should eat a kabetza, a kazayit, an olive volume of matzah in the 17th century, 18th century. You have scholars doing some of the mathematics based on the Talmudic units of measurement, and it seems there was some discrepancy in solid volume and liquid volume that was resolved mathematically by suggesting that olives used to be bigger, and so we have to double all our portions in order to actually fulfill the mitzvah. And if you've been to Sdarim, that people are careful about this. People consume really vast quantities of matzah in a very short amount of time in order to be to accommodate all of these different positions and opinions about how the size we have to eat. Now we know archaeologically, botanically, that olives have not gotten bigger. We know that because we there are olive trees alive today that were alive in the time of the Talmud. The olive trees can last for thousands of years. We also have olives that are thousands of years old that have been preserved. And all of these olives are the same. They have not changed in size. And so, based on archaeology, that is actually not true. And many poskim have said that actually, an olive volume is the size of an olive, like the olives that you yourself experience, not anything much larger than that. And so, well, personally, I spent again many formative years celebrating Starim with people who were really careful about these quantities and ate vast quantities of matzah and maror and korech. I actually don't think it's halakhically necessary, and so I just you shouldn't. I just want to sort of share that with you that you should feel empowered not to. I'll show you. I have um wait 5 seconds. I don't know if you've ever seen this book. It's sort of this is the perspective of the um that the you have to really like double the quantities based on and it has sort of life-size photographs for all the various things you might want to say a bracha for to make sure you have the quantities. Again, I think this is not and I think it has Pesach, it's a whole section on Pesach as well. So again, I think it's not archaeologically, this is not necessary, and so I don't think you have to drive yourself crazy. But if it's a tradition that means things to you, you're welcome to. Okay. And by chatzot, does that mean nirtza? I think it's does not. I think it's the afikoman has to be consumed by chatzot, and all the songs afterwards. I think you can late into the night as you wish. Any other final questions for now? Okay. I hope this was helpful. And if there are, again, if you think of questions in the coming days, please, write me, text me, call. This is like always a fun time for getting lots of questions from people. I love it. It's one of my favorite times of the year as a rabbi because people reach out and yeah, and so wish you all a wonderful Pesach, joyful Pesach, kosher Pesach, and I am eager to get more questions from you in the coming days. But the sooner you send them, the sooner I can research if I don't know the answer. All right. Have a great night, everyone. Be well.